And Mark, let's close out the podcast taking a look at the Cincinnati Bengals or the Cincinnati Bungles, or if you're Brandon Swanson, the Cincinnati Bengals. But before we do that, something I forgot to do for the Josh Rosen segment that I will do here is make sure to check out patreon.com/most valuable podcast. We redid all of our tiers, bronze, silver, and gold. Go and check those out. Also, every dollar that you guys help us out with this year is going towards our new studio that we need desperately. So go ahead and check out patreon.com/most valuable podcast to help us out. And Mark, let's take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals. They're a team we've mentioned this podcast could be a sneaky team to take a quarterback in the first round. I'll do a little setup here. This article coming from Sporting News, but they've got some Bleacher Report and some credible sources in here. Where the first one is from a report on Bleacher Report that said there's talk around the league that Cincinnati is looking to select a quarterback with the number 11th pick in this April's draft. Then later on in the article, they say that Zach Taylor, now head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, said this to the Cincinnati Enquirer. "I know Dalton Smart. I followed his whole career. He's a great fit for what we are going to do. I know all about his background. I probably never pictured I was going to coach him, but I'm very fortunate he's the quarterback here, and I'm excited to work with him." Here's the thing I want to ask you. Should the Bengals draft a first-round quarterback at 11? Because Andy Dalton, although Zach Taylor says that, and it kind of sounds like a vote of confidence, Andy Dalton is done after this year. He's got next year. His contract is over. If you're the Bengals, do you draft a quarterback at number 11?
Well, in our last mock draft, I actually had the Daltons go with a quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think I said the Daltons. I had the Bengals go with a quarterback.
The Cincinnati Daltons.
He might be able to make that happen if he wins them a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing with Andy Dalton. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he's not necessarily a great quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys where he's gonna throw probably a little too many interceptions to make you happy, but he's also gonna throw a decent amount of touchdowns. Not a crazy amount of touchdowns, but a pretty good amount. He's a guy who, if he's got a good team around him, he'll be really good. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that in years like 2016, 2013, when he's been really, really good. The problem is you don't always have that, and the Bengals definitely right now don't have that. So they don't have that. Next season, he's going to turn 32. So he's definitely up there in age. If you look at it to where you have a quarterback you draft in the first round, you got 5 years of this quarterback. If maybe 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, all of a sudden Andy Dalton's like 33 years old. That's kind of old. Not everybody gets to be Tom Brady playing in their 40s. Mm-hmm. Especially when you got a guy like Andy Dalton, which has been good but not amazing. We've seen quarterbacks who we didn't think would get shipped, end up getting shipped like an Alex Smith, getting kind of moved off. Tannehill's a little bit of a different situation, but there were plenty of people who didn't expect that to happen. Mm-hmm. It does happen. These quarterbacks who you just kind of associate with the franchise do eventually get moved quite often. Andy Dalton hasn't done enough for the team in recent memory for this new coaching staff to be completely sold on him. I think that for the Bengals, they are completely dependent on what else happens. If Kyler Murray is still there, they might take a Kyler Murray. If their number 2 guy is still there, like a Dwayne Haskins, or if it's Drew Lock, there's a good chance they would take that guy. But if it gets to those 2 guys being gone, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, now we got to go with Daniel Jones or whatever, they're probably not going to go with quarterback number 3. Mm-hmm. But if one of their top guys is there, I think there's a good chance the Bengals actually do it.
See, I am leaning towards no. Don't take one at 11. Although earlier in this podcast, I said that I could see Dwayne Haskins being a pick at 11, and that's the lowest he goes. If I am the Bengals, I'm not touching a quarterback with my 11th pick. And the reason why is, especially if the guy that I have had go to the Bengals in my mock draft for the past, I think it's been everyone, but it might have been like the last 2 or 3. If Devin White is there at 11, the Bengals make that pick in my mind. If I'm the Bengals GM, I make that pick because to me, I even look at it this way, and I know that you're playing with fire when you do this, but look at these quarterbacks that have recently been drafted. Patrick Mahomes only needed a year. He was a year under Alex Smith. Boom. Now he's starting. Baker Mayfield comes in. Not even a full year. 2 games. He's starting. Look at Lamar Jackson. Half a season. He is starting. Mm-hmm. The way I look at it is Andy Dalton. If you're going to move on him, you do not have to move on him now. Like quarterbacks that we have seen with this kind of quarterbacks favored systems that we've seen in the NFL, we are past the days of Aaron Rodgers where, hey, we're going to draft him. You're going to sit for 3 years under Brett Favre, and then we're going to trade Brett Favre because you're going to take over. These quarterbacks are taking over much quicker because of the systems we have in place.
But then you're saying that you're going to be getting rid of a quarterback who will be turning 33 in that season you get rid of him.
So he's 30. Year.
Yeah, he's 31 years old, going to turn 32. If you keep him for 1 year, you do a Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes waited out a whole year. Yeah. Then that next year you say, all right, Andy, we're going to trade you just like the Chiefs did with Alex Smith. Mm-hmm. Based off of that trade, we think we're probably going to get something pretty good out of you. See you later. You're 33. You're turning 33 pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Have a good one. You don't probably have that much left in the tank at that point.
Well, and that's the thing where I feel like the Bengals, with me, I'm not taking a quarterback because I look at next year. And next year, I feel like the Bengals with Andy Dalton, with Zach Taylor, probably going to be in the similar situation. Going to be a top 15 pick, could even be a top 10 pick. And I know this Cincinnati team, Cincinnati Bengal fans are going to tell us, well, guys, they were a 6-0 team, and then injuries happened. And they fell off the face of the earth.
And they were a good 6-0 team. They were looking really good.
This was a Bengal team that in the preseason, I kind of mocked and said, oh, they're going to be at the bottom. Like, they're going to be at the bottom of the division. It's not going to be close. I think I had them at 4 wins. And when they won their 5th game, Cincinnati Bengal fans let me and Sean hear it, rightfully so, on our Bengals preview last summer. But the thing is, I don't see the Bengals being super successful this year. They were a good 6-0 team. Like, that could change with Zach Taylor. But I look at next year's draft, and we've got Tua, we've got Justin Herbert, who many people are forgetting about, where he was at the beginning of this draft process.
QB1.
The QB1 over Dwayne Haskins. And I feel if he would have came out, there would be, like, we would be having the discussion of him versus Kyler Murray, and people would probably be taking him number 1 overall because I remember I said this on our first big board for the Primetime Podcast. When I watched his film when the season was over, I was like, holy shit, he's got some Cam in him. Like, he has that similar style to Cam Newton, and that is a quarterback that's going to be next year. You've got Jake Fromm from Georgia, which could also be coming out next year. Jacob Eason, we're going to see what he does now that he gets to play with Washington. But really, those top 3 are what I'm looking at.
All that's great, but it depends on what their quarterback number 1 is. If they love Drew Lock, they think he's the best quarterback in the draft, and he's there, they draft him. Same thing with Dwayne Haskins. Same thing with Kyler Murray. And that whoever they like the most, if he's there, they're probably going to take him.
And it depends on it depends on what's there. If Devin White is not there, then I rethink it. Like if Drew Lock is there at 11, but Devin White is not, then I rethink from some things.
If they like him. I mean, it all depends. They're going to have their board, and they're going to say not just who's the best quarterback, who's the best linebacker. It's going to be which one of these guys do we think is the best player in the draft.
Yeah.
And also, do we think that there are other really good linebackers that we can draft and we'll be okay? That's just on them of they're going to look at their board and say who's available. And that's the kind of thing I think Taylor was saying it, where he was saying just because we have a quarterback doesn't mean we throw out the rest of our board. And that's exactly what it is. They have it ranked, and they don't have it ranked so well that they're going to say nothing is better than Andy Dalton. They might say none of these quarterbacks are better than Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
But there's a good chance they say there's one of these guys we would be willing to take.
Yeah, with me and the Bengals, I'm, yet again, putting myself in the shoes of, like, if I'm the GM, and of course, myself and their front office are different, but if I'm the GM, I look at it, and here's what my board looks like at 11. Devin White's my number 1. Clelin Ferrell will probably be my number 2. Devin Bush is my number 3.
Yeah.
And then it's like, maybe quarterback-wise, Drew Lock is in there. Like, if he's available there, all right, we have a discussion at 11. But otherwise, that's the board I look at because I am kind of okay, and yet again, this is assuming they're going to give Zach Taylor a leash of like, hey, we're not going to fire you after year 1. We're not going to fire you after year 2. Because I would be totally fine with going through this year without a quarterback behind Andy Dalton, just seeing what happens, and then taking a run at one of these other quarterbacks, even if I have to trade up to do it next year.
I just think that, it's nice to have your board, Ricky, but, you're saying you're putting yourself in the shoes of those teams, but that's your board.
Yeah.
That's not their board.
No, I know.
So for that, we don't know who they like the most, but to me, it still stands. If they have a quarterback that they like more than other people, they're going to draft him. Andy Dalton got hurt last year, and the team was really good last year for a while. This is a team that could make a playoff run. They could go ahead and do it. And I don't think that there's that many holes on that team to where they would be like, oh, if we draft a quarterback, it's not the Arizona Cardinals. We're like, then we're really screwing over some other stuff.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. They could still make that happen. But here's the thing with that. Andy Dalton doesn't probably have that much longer, so they're definitely taking a quarterback soon-ish. Whether it's this year, whether it's next year. So what that says to me is at any time now in the next few years, they can draft a quarterback.
If I'm not taking one this year, I'm taking one next year.
So they are definitely looking. There's no reason why they wouldn't. They have a quarterback who's, he's on the wrong side of 30 here, and they're going to go ahead and draft a guy when they have the guy who fits.
Yeah, and that's why, I'm looking at their team, and I would say probably the biggest position of need for them would be that linebacker position. Because, even at the offense, you look at it, and it's like you've got Tyler Boyd, you've got A.J. Green, you've got your backfield of Mixon and Giovanni Bernard, which are good pieces. You have now, I know Tyler Eifert, 1-year deal coming back. People are going to kind of see what's going on. Is he going to be injury prone again? Is he actually going to produce for us this year? But I look at this team and I go, you're right. They're not the Cardinals. They don't have holes all over the team. I kind of look at it and I go, with me, depending on it all depends on what's there. If Drew Lock is there, maybe it's a different conversation. Maybe they do like a Daniel Jones. My question that I'm going to ask you is, let's kind of move it. Not just select a quarterback in the first round. Should the Bengals trade up for a quarterback?
No, that they shouldn't do. Don't trade up. Don't give extra things up because your team's not perfect. There's other things you can do with those picks. You just sit at the guys there. Cool. Take them. Or
could you see them, I'm going to throw this out there. Could you see them being a team that is kind of like Baltimore last year? Hey, at 11, we're going to pick our defensive guy, but then we're going to take a second-round pick, try to move up late first round to take a guy like Will Grier.
If that's the guy they like, sure, but I would be surprised on that case. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a quarterback in the second or third round. I can't imagine them trading up to do it, though. Take a guy just to have a quarterback that you can kind of work on and develop and see if he turns out in a little bit. But if you trade up for one of these guys in a quarterback class that's considered weak anyways, that's kind of an issue, especially when you have other things you can do with those picks.
The only way I would trade up for, let's say, because Will Grier is kind of like the guy that people have at 5. The only reason I'm trading up for him is because I want to draft him in the first round to get that 5th-year option on him.
Which I get, but I think if you're drafting one of these guys in the second or third, you're drafting one of these guys knowing that there's a good chance you draft another guy in the first next year.
Okay.
So it's you're going to have a Steelers situation, which is, yes, we got Rudolph, but we don't really care. We'll be willing to draft a quarterback if one's there.
So you're like that, saying that Will Greer is closer to like a Mason Rudolph, not a Lamar Jackson. We're like, Lamar Jackson is like, hey, we're drafting him. He's going to be our guy behind Joe Flacco, but we're not taking a quarterback next year.
You're drafting a guy saying this will be the future of our team.
Yeah.
Where you get a guy like Rudolph or a guy like Will Greer, and you're saying, let's work and see what we can do with him, but we'll see. We like the pieces. We're not sure if he's ready.
And I know your big point has been we don't know what they're thinking.
Yep.
What are you thinking, though? I know I gave my board. So if I'm the GM...
My thing is still that if the guy you like is there, draft him. I would take a Dwayne Haskins. Okay. I wouldn't take a Drew Lock.
Okay. Besides, let's say Haskins is there. What's your board kind of look like? Like, give me 3 prospects. That's like 1, 2, 3 of what I'm thinking there.
I mean, like you said, it all depends on things, and our boards are different based on the drafts. Would I take a Devin White? Yes, I would take a Devin White before this. But to me, I don't really buy the big fall on Dwayne Haskins. If Dwayne Haskins is there for me and a guy like Devin White's not, I'm taking a Dwayne Haskins. He'll be good. You can work on those minor things that people wanted to work on. You can work on that and improve it, and then you got a better player in a year or two when he starts playing. And if people truly are a little bit down on Dwayne Haskins, he's not going to mind sitting and waiting.
No.
But even if he does, who cares? He's on a 5-year contract. He doesn't have a choice.
Yeah. And I mean, if Dwayne Haskins gets picked at 11, then I would say Andy Dalton is going to get Alex Smith. Hey, Dwayne, sit this year. You'll be playing next year. Like, Andy Dalton will be moved in the offseason, and you won't have to worry about it. One question I do want to ask you, because I don't think we've talked about this. Maybe we have, and I am just completely blanking on it.
Okay.
Zach Taylor, is he going to be successful either this year with the Bengals or throughout his tenure?
I think he definitely can, because the Bengals are a good team. Without an injury, the Bengals were a playoff team, and Marvin Lewis was coming back.
Yeah.
So I do think that he's got a very good chance of being a successful coach here.
Because like when he was hired, the thing that I thought in my head was, my first thought was, all right, another McVay connection. Like we're going with the McVay thing. And I just, for me, was wondering, is he going to be the one that pans out? Like, it's not like I have more faith in him than Kingsbury.
He's in the best situation for sure.
I mean, he's got a team around him.
Yeah. And honestly, that's kind of what matters most of the time.
And we'll see this team. This division is also kind of interesting, too, because the Bengals will need to compete with a better Browns team, where I heard kind of the best comparison to this Browns team on Good Morning Football, where they made the comparison that the Browns coming into this year are kind of like the 49ers of last year.
Super hyped up.
A lot of hype around them.
A lot of disappointment on the future
maybe
on the horizon.
Maybe someone gets injured and they kind of sputter out. I mean, that's what happened to the 49ers.
Super teams are dangerous.
I looked at that and I went, holy crap, he's right. Because like the 49ers, I bought into that hype last year.
You bit hard
and
on
I might be buying into the Brown hype also. But like the Ravens should be a better team.
The Browns hype is more real than the 49ers hype. 49ers was just, they've got a pretty quarterback. They're going to be amazing.
The Browns have more of a complete team. The only thing that the 49ers have, I would say, is
a pretty quarterback.
A better coach. I would say Kyle Shanahan is better than Freddie Kitchens.
Well, we haven't seen Freddie Kitchens yet.
I get that. But if Kyle Shanahan was on this Browns team as the head coach, oh boy, would they be a scary team this year. But yeah, I mean,
you say that, but we've never seen Shanahan be successful, really, in the NFL as a head coach.
I mean, isn't this the only year? Wasn't last year the only year he was a head coach, though?
That's my point, though. Okay. So far, we've only seen failure.
I know, but his quarterback got injured. So, I mean...
Sure, but he's an offensive coach. He should be able to get something out of another quarterback.
He kind of resurrected Dave's boy, Kittle.
Well, everybody loves Kittle.
He kind of made him... put him on the map and said, here he is. But yeah, the Bengals will be interesting.
That's what happens when you don't have other weapons to throw the ball to.
Because the Browns and Ravens are kind of on an up. The Steelers are kind of on a down. And we'll see if the Bengals stay there at 3 or they move into 1 or 2 with the Browns and the Ravens. But that's going to do it for the Onside Kick this week. Make sure to let us know what you think down below about the Bengals, about Josh Rosen, will he get traded, and about Dwayne Haskins and his possible slide in the NFL draft. Make sure to check us out on patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. That's how you help support us. Make sure we can keep doing these videos for you each and every week and each and every day. Also, make sure to go on iTunes and Apple Podcasts and give us that 5-star rating. It really helps us out, gets us into the ears of more people, and we really appreciate it for all the ones that have gone out there and given us that 5-star rating. But for Ricky Widmer, at Ricky Widmer, for at the Mark Weber, dub them E's. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.